these names too. Velayudan. Velayudan is a very popular South Indian name. Anyway, coming back to, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Just one query.
Sure.
The whole thing about Kartikeyan and being a son of Shiva and Parvati, was that a way of assimilating the fold, or in
Yes.
some way the confluence bringing it together?
Absolutely. I would think it's very much the same. See, the thing, sir, is at no point in time, I think I'm very crystal clear on that point, that we cannot study the culture of this land in compartments. And what has happened for so many years, with all due respect to all the scholars, to all the work that has been done, is a particular section has been taken and studied, not in the context to what it really belonged to. And the worst hit in this kind of a study that has happened is social history, religious history, and of course, to that extent, the economic history of this land. Now, for example, just to give you, I'm not digressing, but just to validate my point, we always say that in India, it was always a spiritual land. We never had any kind of, because everyone was interested only for, for meditation and things like that, and that kind of a thing. We never really bothered about economics. Hello, what about Purushartha then? What about Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha? What is Artha? Then even Buddhist economics, if you study the whole concept of Madhyama Pratipad, which is the whole space of the Eightfold Path, which all of us know, what is that based on? And even philosophy that matter has come only because of material culture that existed. No? If Buddha came up with the whole theory of Paticca Samuppada and sense-object contact and sense-object attachment, obviously there are objects, which is testified by the Brahmajala Sutta. So the point is, we have to study this in context to what is happening, and not just, this happens to be a Nastika text, this happens to be a Nastika text, etc. So when you study, especially Sangam, 100%, 150% when you are studying literature of this particular period, it has to be studied in context. So yes, so I completely agree. So this confluence that we are seeing, the confluence has definitely happened. Now, for example, Nam is here. Now, even the Gotras that we are talking about, Gotra. What is Gotra? Gotras are those various rishis who have moved out, and that is how you are tracing your lineage to them. Na? So, there has always been a spread. So, why can't we accept it beautifully and move on?
See, the modern revivalism of Sangam has been more from a confrontational,
yes,
from a superiority kind of a thing. But if you look at the confluence,
yes,
are there some mappings of the other epics? You have the Puranic epics which can be mapped to the literature.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, for example, the Purana, the Skanda Purana itself, if you see, the description, see, there is no conflict in the portrait. I hope you got that particular point. When I was studying the various Tinnais and the various areas and the portrayal of those deities there is no conflict as to how we would think of a Krishna, or we would think of a Muruga or a Skanda or a Kartikeya, or we would think of an Indran, or we would think of a Varuna. See, Varuna in that sense becomes equivalent, say, to the god of rain, isn't it? So, we don't see the conflict in the portrayal. So if there is no conflict in the portrayal, then obviously there must have been an interchange and an interplay. And more than anything else, the whole space of bhakti that was there was very common across. So Akatyar, whether we say Akatyar came from south or from north, etc., we will keep it where it is, and we will say that there has been a confluence, and Chankam itself means confluence. Chankam itself means a whole collaboration of ideas. Okay, so that was a very good question, and that is, I think it's high time we start, and the fact that we are deliberating this itself is a good way to maybe start off a thought process. Okay, Mandaji itself, in Hinayana Buddhism, she was taken to Ceylon, and there she was given this name called Goddess Pattani. So there you would notice, now my references very clearly show me, in fact when I staged the Shilapatikaram many years back in the Somya Buddhist Center conference, there were a lot of Sri Lankan delegates, and the fact is, she is worshipped in Sri Lanka, parts of Sri Lanka, as a deity who protects. as a deity who takes care of, who wards away all the injustice, etc. And there, who is this deity? This deity is a reference, or she is actually Kannadi. You will see. And as if, I'll show you the pictures. I've got some pictures, but of course those pictures are from our Google God. So I will show you the pictures. So for the want of any sculptural evidences that I just decided, just for us to get those imageries, is the fact that she apparently offers mangoes to Gautama. And that is how you will see the imageries, where you will see how she is portrayed there. So once again, this interaction between, and that's not surprising. See, we don't have to be very surprised about that, because Cholas, they were seafaring people. They traveled to Southeast Asia and Sri Lanka, so that is really not very surprising. The Baburi temple in Kodagulu is also very famous for this particular place. And of course, in Shilabadikaram, we find references to a Kali temple. They witness a terrible dance of the priestess of Kali. Then we see how she has performed. And most of the references that we get to this particular deity is very vibrant and very violent. All of this, you can just read. See, this is again very fascinating. This I do not know. I have not done my studies on this. But I have gone to Alampur some time back. And the presiding deity of Alampur is this deity called Jogalamba Devi. If you see the portrayal of Jogalamba Devi, of course, no references, just an observation. I do not know whether there are any papers that are published in this particular.
I've seen he has written in Marathi. And using some Kannada sources, he says that Jogala stands for cradles. And so Jogalamba is a goddess, so what he does.
Yeah. It's a fertility goddess. That way all our goddesses are associated. But for me, what was fascinating was the portrayal of Jogalamba Devi and what we see here. Of course, it is just an observation. We will leave it that. The point is, again, the kind of work that maybe is still needs to be explored and studied. The cult of Durga is found. You can read this slide. What I found very fascinating was in the text of Manimekalai, there is a goddess called Chinta Devi whose cup is never empty. And also there is another deity called Kadampar Selvi, also known as Kartikeya Kadurai Kadavul, standing with a beggar's bowl worshipped in temples adjacent to burial grounds. Another deity by the name of Manimekhala. See, there is a deity called Manimekhala itself, who is a very popular deity for ocean goddesses.
So it's mentioned
in Shilabadikaram. In fact, some of the references I gave is from Shilabadikaram. The deity, the Durga worship, etc. is from Shilabadikaram. This is again very fascinating. Again, we go back to this whole Nadukal. Nadukal is again very interesting because Nadukal basically would imply these references that we get very closely to the Veeragal images. This kind of a thing is done even today. The stones, I do not know whether this custom is there in remote part of Maharashtra, but in parts of Telangana you would see stones that are, the haldi, kukum के साथ उसको venerate किया जाता है. So we see those references.
The hero stone, yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, the hero stone.
Hero stone, Veeragal, yeah. Yes.
We call it Paliya in Gujarati.
I'm sorry?
We call it Paliya in Gujarati.
Okay. Now these are the
Paliya.
references that we get to mythical sculptures. Of course, this was just by the way. This is not Sangam literature, but just for you to have an idea as to when you're looking at mythical portrayal or myths, the role of myths, you would realize that even in sculptural references, you would find a lot of these characters as part of South Indian temple architecture. That is, there would be entire panels of the Ganesha. There is the entire spaces of Ganesha, Vigneshwara, his portrayal, iconographic references. Annam. In fact, Annam is very popular. Annam is, even in our sari motifs, etc., Annam designs are given because an Annam is a mythical bird that separates water from milk. Hanuman, of course, all of us know. Kamadhenu. Kamadeva is again very popular. Kinnaras. I'm not saying that these references are found in Sangam literature. Let me make that very clear. I'm just telling you that when you're looking at mythology, apart from the literary sources, somewhere there has to be a link, maybe for the want of dating, etc. Whether such references, even by say an observation, can be done, say, to sculptural and architectural evidence. I do not know, since this is a course that is going to propel you for the research, I thought I should just put in this one point very humbly in front of you. Vaishasana, Sarpadoshas. We all have snake stones, and snake stones. Again, in the this I have to tell you. In the Sangam literature, early Sangam, especially in the 8 anthologies, Ettutogai, we find references to that, which is what I would like to maybe read a little bit. We have Nagakals. Nagakal is there. Kallu in Tamil means stone. Yes, ma'am, Nagakal. We have Nagakal. Then we also have Sarpakal. Yes. Sarpadosham is there, especially for people.
What I heard was that
Yes.
every family has got its own Nagastone.
Yes.
And that Nagastone needs to be
That is Kavil. No, Nagastone, I do not know. See, in Kerala, we have this whole thing of Rapidi Cut where every family has their own Kavil. And generally, Kavil means their own temple with their own column, etc. And what you would notice, along with the Kavil, there would be the stones or the Nagakal that is seen. That is there. Now, as far as Nagakal, Sarpadosham that we are saying, Sarpadosham is largely, as all of us know, there is this whole problem. Okay, that is there in the horoscope, the Rahu Ketu, Sarpadosham. So there, yes, so there the Sarpakal becomes very important. And today, most of the Kerala temples, if you see, you would have a separate area for Sarpa Pujas and Sarpa. What is it that I was trying to deliberate? Okay, what is it I was trying to deliberate? What I was trying to do was, through the literature, which is again, as you have seen, it's exceedingly complex. The entire space that we have, let me just go back to that particular slide. Then we will try and reconstruct. Through the various literary sources that we have, Shilapadikara, Manimegalai, then Pattu Patti as well as Ettutogai, we have tried to understand the references that we get for these deities. Now the classic deities I found, as far as the sources goes back to that space of those 5 Thinnais. Okay, that's the second point, 5 Thinnais. Each of these Thinnais have some specific references which I have told you, and depending upon the geography, that particular deity was worshipped. The classic point 4, the point that we discussed, is do we find a cross-cultural reference? Of course, yes, we do find a cross-cultural references. We find cross-cultural references across north and south, and not to get into the space of how it happened, we just accept that that's the way it was. And the fact is, there has to be a composite whole. Now, as far as the Muruga's portrayal goes, yes, Muruga is very much in the zone, in the space today. Muruga is worshipped. He's got all these very important sites which are on hills, and of course the various mythological stories associated with Muruga. Again, some references very clearly told me that just like you look at Lord Krishna, so to say, in north. Maybe that's why, sir, you had this thing of, the association with Radha. But the fact is, just like how Lord Krishna is looked at north, maybe Muruga in that context is looked at south, because he does his chetar, and he's a deity with a lot of valor, etc. That is the references that we get. Then, from the popular literature, what happens? From the popular literature, Kannagi is worshipped today. Well, Kannagi is a deity who is worshipped. And in Shilapadikaram itself, we get references of how a deity called Kali, Durga, some scholars believe it is this Kauravite deity who actually the goddess who went on to become goddess Kali later. And of course, the influence of Kannagi, so to say, with the Theravada Buddhism, Hinayana Buddhism, where she is given a goddess called Goddess Pattani. So you would see the whole story. Now, what are the mythological stories associated with them? Are they very similar stories? I didn't find any specific kind of stories in the literature that will talk about these people. We found references where you would say, okay, this is the way they are worshipped. I would then like to say that as far as the mythological stories went, it is very similarly the same space that the kind of mythological stories that you would associate with these particular deities even otherwise. Any questions that you have, please, on this?
So this money is needed. literature was written by Brahmanas?
No, no. The literature, we have references that this particular literature, we have references as far as the Changam literature went, that there was a host of people who wrote it. They came from different, that's why I think my first slide, I put that down, that these people came from different walks of life. Yes, there was, see, Changam was a period, actually, Changam was a period where you had, it's something like this, people discussed and they penned down. As Sir said very rightly, 2 Changams got washed out, but then some of those memories and some of those remains. And again, dating. So this is actually going on what we call as the consensus maybe dating, where we have these texts approximately belonging to these particular periods. It's a very, very difficult zone to walk on. It is. So as far as now this is again a conflict, because if you're looking at the Varna Dharma system that existed as far as the Brahmana, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras, did we have some kind of a thing happening, of course, across the Changam period? Of course we did. Okay, but the Shudras that we're talking about, as far as the cultural space of Shudras, I don't know whether we can make a sweeping statement whether they did not exist at all. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. No, because the simple reason, just after the post-Changam period, under the patronage again of this very same kings, we had the entire movement of Nayanmars and Alvars. So in the Nayanmar Alvar movement, we see very clearly people, and especially people coming from members or people coming from very, very different walks, and especially cobblers, etc., also coming and contributing to the Nayanmar and Alvar literature. Now, whether that is an impact of the Bhakti movement, etc., yes, of course, I would say so, because there is that. For example, if you're looking at what the very famous Nayanmar saint, Andal, or for that matter, you're looking at the very famous Nayanmar saint, which is Karaikal Ammayar, which is again, in Karaikal Ammayar's compositions, you would see that in Vivatsa she found Shringara. Karaikal Ammayar personified Shiva in the cremation grounds and all of that. But in that Vivatsa is what she found Shringara. So the point I'm trying to make is whether we can make a sweeping statement, I'm not quite sure about that, and leave it where it is. But again, see, the point is we are still in that particular zone where we are constantly trying to say, did it exist like that? My point is, let's leave it where it is. My point is, let's just look at the literature for what it is, which is what our scholars are doing right now, and that is the only source that we seem to be having at this point in time. But, mind will always want to see, right? So if mind has to see, especially for Changam, especially for this particular period, and I think Sir would agree with me on this because he's done a course with you on this, I really wish we had some archaeological evidences, or the entire Pandit kings for that matter, to tell us clearly, through evidences, who supported which Changam and why. Till then, we have only basing on literary evidences, which is what my very humble attempt has been, and believe me, Professor Madhuri, it has not been an easy trek to walk. Because Changam itself is a very tough space to deal with. Okay, so we have this source book, you can read this. So mythology, economics and culture becomes very important. And yes, and maybe that is why this interrelationship, this confluence has not happened. This confluence has not happened. Maybe, yes.
No, I mean, my question again goes into the realm of, is this a classic case of identity politics? Because I see it in that way. What happens is that we have an economic region which becomes very prosperous. Where an economic region starts becoming prosperous, right? And so therefore now you come, now the kings or whoever, the elite class, kind of starts creating a set of literature, culture, activities, which kind of is a protagonization or protagonization of their ways of doing things. And then you kind of, because if you look at the history the way, kind of whatever has been scripted, it supports, right? It supports a certain way of political thinking, right? So I always say that, when people really travel, but also does travel their politics. So I think that is what is, this is a characterizing. I mean, when I look at this literature, this is what it for me.
Now I keep all diplomacy aside, okay? See, when we are looking at the study of history, the biggest challenge that we have is who writes history? Do people create history or history is created by people? See, this is a big conflict. Now, especially when you're looking at Chankam literature in south of India, you know, the whole space of Chola, Chera as well as Pandya. First of all, I'm slightly digressing, but it's a valid point. First of all, you know, the way it has been even brought across, so to say, to the right from the time that we were in school. Okay, Chola period, Chola is Chole. Okay, Chera is what nonsense, yeah. Nerunjayan, my God, I'm going to the ICU and come back. Right? So the space is the how are you going to get this across? So and again, we also have what is called as regional kind of identity. If it is a South Indian history, only that particular area, Chola, even there will be conflicts. Only they will start studying that particular literature, but because it belongs to them. This Deccan region, they will study literature because this belongs to us. North India, they will study history because crazy. In all of this compartmentalization, what really happens is the essence of what the literature is trying to say, we have completely forgotten. We have lost it completely. So, first of all, language is dying. Today, for studying French and German, there are queues. Regional departments, Marathi departments, Sanskrit departments, Pali departments, etc. We all know. Hello, I come from ancient Indian culture. It's not easy to sustain subjects like ours. Not at all easy. Sir knows that. He's come for one of our lectures. It's not easy. Because a student would rather do an economics, rather do a psychology because it's very fashionable, rather do a sociology, rather than ancient Indian culture, AIC. Even AIC sounds so basic. So when a student wants to take major in AIC, the first thing is, my God, are you okay? What do you want to do in life? I hope you have not taken Allegra or something and you have decided to want to major in this. And if you want to major in that course, first 2 years it's okay, Radhavan is very peaceful, she gives marks. So take the course. But T1 AIC, are you sure? Second point, what are you going to do after this? So I'm not digressing at all. What I'm trying to say is, when we have these conflicts in our mind, why you sir, even I myself have these conflicts. When we are studying a particular source, when we are debating on a particular topic, there are so many gaps that comes even in these sources, and it is not easy for one individual to put all those gaps together. Why? Because it is not testified by other sources, whether it's other literary sources or other archaeological sources. You understand? That's the second. I'm answering. You're damn right. Absolutely. There are hassles where you want to stick to those particular zones. You do not want to Murugan, enga Muruga yaar, enna oru periya Karthika solliட்டு இருக்கா? Enga Muruga அது. Why do we have to do that? அது எங்க பக்கம். And okay, that is one. And then the other problem also is the innate divisions that exist in those regions itself. So in all this conflicts, in all this so-called identity crisis, if I may use the word, this particular bit gets completely lost. So who studies this? Youngsters, students like you, maybe who want to basically build this up. And secondly, scholars, teachers, they try. When I went to study 5 colleges in Tamil Nadu. The Tamil departments there are struggling to maintain it. And the regional languages itself. If you have a student coming, say, from a regional background, the student himself or herself starts feeling very low. Why? Because I'm coming from a vernacular medium. Why? So then, how do you expect such things to exist, to survive, to flourish, to be in the what we very popularly call public domain? We use that word, na? Public domain, popular culture. Popular culture. I basically wanted to give you some imageries now. Again, very honestly. Sure.
Malik, we have heard from. We just mentioned that. It's a very.
I'm sorry, I didn't get it.
Most of us know about Marika. The regional
I don't see. I have no idea about that particular region that got lost in the seas. Of course, there have been references to the fact that it got wiped out, and some of the scholars, as I told you very clearly, seem to believe that this must have been some kind of a tsunami thing. But then again, I would like to say that just like they had an SR Rao who went painstakingly to excavate Ved Dwaraka, I really wish we had somebody else to go and excavate those sites. So without my references being very strong on that, I don't think I would like to push really. Okay. Anyway, so let's get back to this pictures. Just imagery. These are imageries that you have seen in a lot of. These are the mythological. Of course, Lord Muruga was very much present in our. Anybody would like to say anything about these imageries or any particular veil Muruga? This is a veil that is spear that is there. Muruga was always considered to be a warrior god. He is. We have evidences to the fact that, of course, see Muruga also, the birth of Muruga. As far as the birth of Muruga itself goes into the whole space of, there is no conflict as to how he was born. I think that particular story all of us are aware, Kritikas, etc. coming in. So we have that evidence there. And the story of Ganesha and that we have those references also in the Chankam literature. And his portrayal, these are the imageries that you would see. Ganesha and these are classic images that you would see in the south of India, okay? Yeah, this is calendar. These are just images, okay? This is not any research academic, this is just for you to have an idea. Both his wives.
Ayyappa is modeled after Muruga. Ayyappa is also one of the
Parani.
forms of Muruga.
This is Madurai Meenakshi. This is Meenakshi. Again, why Meenakshi? Because you know that she plays a very important role as far as in the Sangam literature, the last scene when she comes, especially you know when Kannagi is in that boat, she comes up. So Meenakshi plays a very predominant role there. This is a classic story of Meenakshi getting Sundareshwar Kalyanam, where she gets, and of course the story of Meenakshi is also very interesting. You know, she was a warrior goddess. Basically the story goes that she has 3 breasts, and then the story goes that when she sees the person that she's going to get married to, apparently the breast will vanish. Of course, she goes fighting to Kailasha, she looks at Shiva, she falls in love, and then they decide that they're going to get married. And at that point, Vishnu comes in, and Vishnu, gives away Meenakshi. So that, and of course, Shiva here is called as Sundareshwar. I've been to the Madurai Meenakshi temple, absolutely amazing. We find, so mythology also, we find references to all these stories. And by the way, I forgot to tell you this, Sthala Puranas give us a lot of information about these stories and stuff. So, of Madurai Kinchi. Madurai Kinchi also gives us, and Sthala Puranas of that particular place itself, we have references to these particular sites. This is of course Agatya. Agatya is portrayed like this. This is one sculptural image that I found of Agatya. This is Bala Muruga. As you can see, I found this very fascinating. See, he's got more like Krishna. Feather, the peacock feather. And he is also on a peacock, right? So, kind of. Again, Muruga. These are the sculptural iconography. I had, this is Kannagi. I think all of us must have seen this. This is in Chennai. Those of you who go to Chennai will see this image of Kannagi, statue of Kannagi in Chennai. This is the calendar art that you will see of Kannagi with Shilambi, which goes to the Shilambis. And the Shilambanikara. The Shilamba is the anklet. This is what I told you. This is the Pattani images that you see in how Kannagi is portrayed like this in Sri Lanka. So that's the mangoes there, because she apparently, the story goes, mythology story goes, that she offered those mangoes to Lord Buddha. So and she is in all the India, the Theravada texts, they actually believe that she protects the entire place and she wards away all sickness. That's the evidence that we get. Kannagi and Shilapanikara is a very popular story as far as ballets, etc. goes. So mythologically also, and whatever literature, whatever mythology, I had to bring in Ramajikana, I had to bring in Uncle Pai. Because had it not been for Uncle Pai, I don't think, even a little bit of mythology that all of us are there in our zone and in our friends and children's zones would have been there. And this is a very popular portrayal of, and these are the imageries actually speaking remains with us. These are the imageries that actually remains with us. Okay, these are some of the images that I want to bring across. Yeah. Just one thing of Muruga I wanted to tell you. It's about this Kavadi, this Kavadi dance that they have, where the mythological story goes that there was this Asura disciple of Agastya. His name was Idumbar. We find this, have you seen the Kavadi dance during the Taipusham, etc.? All these people, they have that, it's like a palanquin, like this, and they dance, Kavadi. It's a very popular folk dance.
From all the old 1950 GKB, even the Padmarajan,
I'm sorry,
the
I didn't get
Ramraja
what you said.
movie, where there's that really popular song, Mamboile, Pumboile.
Yes. I've not heard that song, but it goes in a rhythm, that much I know. But then the Kavadi dance is again a very popular folk tradition, and there's a story behind that. If you don't mind, it's a very interesting, popular mythological story. Asura's disciple, Agastya had an Asura disciple called Idumban. And the story goes that Idumban, he had to carry both these hills, Shivagiri and Shaktigiri, to south. So when he comes, he puts that hills down, apparently where we know today as Parani. And at that point, Muruga was actually in that angry young man's zone because he didn't get that param, he didn't get the fruit. And when he keeps the hills down, he wants to lift it up again. Idumban, the Asura, he can't lift it. Why? Because Muruga is there as a small child. So he suddenly realizes, oh, this is the deity that I am worshipping, and that is how the hills apparently comes in. So that's a very interesting there, and there he is also called as Danta Ayudapani Swami. Muruga in that portrait is called that way. And again, of course, regarding Meenakshi also, there is another very interesting mythological story where Indra builds a small Shivalinga. And around this Kadambavan, again ma'am, there is a reference to Kadambavan there. So this is something that one has to read. So there, she goes to worship, and that is how in that particular space, Madurai Meenakshi goes and surrenders herself, and that particular temple, that particular spot becomes very important for the Meenakshi temple itself. So again, there is an association that we see with Indra. And why am I talking about Indra? Early Chankam literatures, they have references to Indra as one of the very important deities of the areas. Then of course, just some stories that what I was trying to get across. As you were also trying to very correctly say, that it was all coming down to the mountain part. There was definitely a growth that was happening, there was definitely territories that were taking, and in all of this, and I do not know, of course, there has to be more research on this, I'm not telling this on authentic references, but my understanding, if I may say so, of the Gota system. There has been a connectivity.
What I also interestingly see is that
Sure.
the deities that have generally been, kind of welcomed in the north become very powerful in the south.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so Indra, always, the guy who is always, behind the
Yes.
the guy who is very powerful.
Powerful. But sir, this has happened only in the early Sangam literature.
Yeah.
After that, even Indra has
Indra is
gone
not,
away.
yeah, but that is where now the influence, and that's where the economic, that's where the whole point is.
That is why I'm saying. Now, as a cultural historian, it's very difficult for me to link myself only to mythology. But mythology for me becomes a source to also construct the spread of culture, to see the symbiosis. So I'm using this. Now, I also found this was very interesting. Like, Mu is Mukundan. In South Chankam there is literature, that is Vishnu. Ru is Rudra. Ka is Kamalam or Brahma. Where is Jnana Shakti, which is associated with Muruga. Okay, and this particular the Asura who Muruga destroys, he subdues the Asura, and that is the Asura becomes the Vahana for Muruga, which is the So it's very, very fascinating. I really wish that this link as such is established, and Chankam literature gets itself associated, so to say, in the normal space. Now again, very fascinating, and I think I should end with that, and maybe questions and maybe more introduction. What really exists in the what in south is the icon of Nataraj, very popular. Okay, Meenakshi Devi, that is the way all our goddesses. Okay, the Prakriti and the goddesses are very much, whether it's Kanchi Kamakshi, Madurai Meenakshi, for that matter even in deep south, Chotanikai Bhagavati, all of them are very much there in the public space, including as what I just said to Madhuri just now, Yogalamari, very much there, that is there. And also another deity very popular, if I may say so, from the Chankam tradition, is Muruga. So Devi, Muruga and we have Parvati. That is, if you are looking at it from the Shakti standpoint. And the similarity as far as the mythology goes, yes, mythology helps us to construct our culture, helps us to link, helps us maybe to understand, and this is my take, that we are part of the ecosystems. And Ahamkara, of the mythological stories, even for that matter, Chilabalikara, when the king falls down, it's Ahamkara. You can't say that I am the king, now you are supposed to check how can you do something like that. So you go back to the concept of Purusharthas. With that, I would like to say Nandri, thank you so much for thank you so much. I'm so honored that ma'am was there in this particular lecture. I'm really honored, ma'am. मैंने आपके सामने बात किया, that itself is a very big thing. I think that itself, I think I deserve a lot of thank you. Such an honor just to be just having you.
You know, the person who was asking you questions is an economist.
So I should tell you this,
They invite you to talk about the budget, you know, but he
so should I say ma'am? So ma'am, should I say autograph please? Oh, okay. So I should say autographs please. So since you are in economics, I must tell you this, that I have tried in my little bit now. You can edit all this. I have tried where we had an economic conference in college where I did a paper on the relevance of Madhyama Pratipad or Atta in modern economics. And I was actually thinking I am going to get slaughtered because it's a hardcore economic conferences and you know how all economics are.
Yes.
This is, I find this very interesting only for the reason.
Sure.
Sorry for saying all this.
Sure.
But the most interesting part is that whenever you go, I mean, the way political economy blossoms in a country as diverse as India is through identity, right? And the way it blossoms is, so you see that there is always something, it starts with any theory, okay, starts with postulates, right? Geometry, classic case, point, line, and plane. You don't ask for definitions. Augustine, don't ask for a definition.
Yeah.
Vishnu, you just don't ask for definitions. Start with all these postulates and then you start finding out the theorems.
Oh yes.
That's how it, that's how it goes.
Very well put. I think that's very well put because right now what's happening is we are getting very enmeshed in our own identities. Who came first? How did he say so? Are we Dravidian? Are we Aryan? Are we Aryan? What is Arya? I mean, I support, I think all of us, I don't know whether I'm speaking to all of you, is the whole Saraswati Sindhu civilization. I mean, how can you say? Classic example is we have first Harappan sites, very, very properly organized, etc. After that, we do not know what happens, and suddenly we see Vedic India, which is absolutely. So, how is it that we're looking at urban in that site, and then you're seeing a completely, if I may say so, a site which does not have a shred of archaeological evidences? How do we say so? Then in our popular mythological existence, etc., we are talking about the whole Saraswati. In fact, when I went to Alampur, you will see, I don't have these pictures, you will see Ganga, you will see Ganga, you will see Yamuna, and you will see Ganga carrying a small little girl, ma'am. Sculpture that is portrayed. You know who she's Saraswati. It is portrayed as Saraswati, ma'am, and that is very much there in our temple structures and architecture. It is part of our local dialogue and discourses. Why are we not admitting it? Why aren't we not talking about it? And the moment you say something like this, all kind of colors will come up over your eyes. I have no idea what colors are. Colors for me are beautiful. Right? And we have always, as Sir very rightly said, we have always celebrated a multicultural society. Okay, Rudra Dhamma inscription. How do Hindu actually call it? Let's start from there. At every point in time, we have seen this kind of symbiosis. So, Chankam becomes a very important space for us to articulate this point. In fact, when Madhuri told me, yes, I was quite, quite worried as to how I should get across because it is a very tough topic to deal with. Why? Because it is based only on literature. how do you deal with something like this?
Yeah, we discuss it all deep. Okay.
Emphasize the Tamil aspect of
Next 10 minutes.
just modify and make it inclusive according to
Yes, absolutely.
emphasize that
100%.
the
Yes.
moment the word Tamil is
Tamil comes in, yeah, yes, absolutely.
when we started before the Tamil, now it's part of our
Absolutely, yes. So that means I have been slightly successful in my
So before we joined this course, we had some vague ideas about mythology, but it's only after we joined the course and started coming here that a lot of doors opened for us. We learned about various mythologies, systematic theories of mythology. We even learned distant cultures like Norse mythology, etc. But I'm really happy today that we opened a door closer to home, that is South Indian Sangam literature. And it's not only us, but the 60 mythological roundtables across the globe that is going to benefit thanks to the video recordings. And we'd like to thank you for taking the time out and giving us this insight into Sangam literature. And it also helps that you're a dancer because it was an extremely visually appealing lecture. It was also very witty, humorous. It kind of got us really interested. And we like to definitely we hope that you will be in touch with the university. And we also, on behalf of the Department of Sanskrit, on behalf of the Joseph Campbell Foundation and the Joseph Campbell Mythological Roundtable of Bombay, we'd like to thank you, and we hope that you will be in touch with the other roundtables as well. They would benefit from your insights. Thank you so much.
Very happy. Thank you so much for inviting me. I hope you take